let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome to the intersection of faith and the culture. It's WallBuilders Live. We're talking about today's hottest topics on policy and faith and other areas of the culture. But we always look at those issues from a biblical, historical, and constitutional perspective. We have that conversation with David Barton, America's premier historian and the founder of WallBuilders. Also with Tim Barton, national speaker and pastor and president of WallBuilders. And my name is Rick Green. I'm a former Texas legislator and America's Constitution coach. Check us out at wallbuilderslive.com. That's our main website where you get all kinds of great information, including archives of the program, which means if you missed any shows the last few weeks, just go to wallbuilderslive.com today and you can pick those up. Whether it's our Good News Friday programs that has a lot of great news from across the nation and around the world, or maybe our Foundations of Freedom Thursday programs, which you will enjoy hearing the questions of our audience answered on everything from Declaration of Independence principles to specific founding fathers to constitutional questions to application of biblical worldview to the issues of the day. We do that on Thursdays with our Foundations of Freedom Thursday program, and you can send questions in for that as well. Just send them into radio@wallbuilders.com. Also, Monday through Wednesday, we typically have an interview with someone that's either on the front line somewhere in the country, maybe a senator or a congressman or an activist or an attorney or someone from a think tank or whoever it might be. Those are typically Monday through Wednesday, which is what we're doing today. And so there's other programs like today on the website. Just check it all out at wallbuilderslive.com. And while there, click on the contribute button and make that one-time or monthly contribution to make this programming possible. As a listener-supported program, we greatly appreciate all of you out there that have been giving those one-time contributions, many of you doing monthly. Thank you. We appreciate you. And this program has been made possible because of you. All right, guys, later in the program, we've got a guest on from Heritage Foundation to talk about the free college proposals from these presidential candidates on the Democrat side, which, of course, is only fair that David, you and Tim should pay for my college, my kids' college, their kids' college, and everybody else in Dripping Springs. I just think that's only fair.
I want to know if I can turn in receipts and get a reimbursement.
Well, I'm going to go back to something that I've said in our family forever, or at least for as long as I've been raised.
I mean, you've been around a long time.
I've been around a long time, so maybe it is forever.
Forever's pretty accurate.
Yeah, I got the white hair to go with that, and that is you're not allowed to use the word fair. Fair is not a word you can use. You can't even say it in the Hebrew, which means it didn't cross God's mind that something was fair. Fair is all subjective, and it's fair for who? There's a lot of things I think should be fair for me that nobody else agrees with me on. So you got to take that word out. So, Rick, you can start this again without using the word fair. So how are you going to make your argument without that word?
Yeah, let's see. It's only, I'll play the AOC card. It's only just.
Oh, nice change.
Well, right, and here's what's silly about this whole conversation, guys, is, right, we are in a battle over words where the words have become subjective. It's semantics, and they mean different things to different people, but this notion that something can be free, right? Well, college should be free. Well, free for who? Because nothing is free in and of itself.
Can I ask a question here? Can you guys name anything to me where free is actually free?
The napkins at Chick-fil-A. No, they got to pay for that.
You
That's
paid
right.
for that with the chicken nuggets.
The air you breathe.
Okay, that may be close.
That would make a song.
That may be close. I couldn't think of anything that really is free. I mean, we're told all this stuff is free, and I could. Even the grace of Jesus is not free. It cost him a lot.
Very high price.
And high price for him, and for us to live out that life should be a high price for us. I can't think of anything that really was free.
And
David, you've said all your life, so I'm going to say my dad has said my whole life, there ain't no free lunch. That's the way he always put it.
Yeah.
There ain't no free lunch. It's always in the price of the meal.
Well, and something, Dad, I mean, you mentioned, I think it's such a great point, right? We talk about God's love or Jesus or salvation. It's a free gift. Well, it is free for us, but an incredibly high price was paid, so it could be free for us. And this is the problem when we talk about something being free. Rick, right to your dad's point, there's no such thing as a free lunch, meaning that somebody had to pay for it. So it might be free to you. It's not free for everybody else. And if we start talking about free college, free healthcare, who is it free for? Because
a free guaranteed income is also part of what they're advocating.
The basic guaranteed income. Who is that free for? Because somebody has to pay for it. And what happens when you move from the person receiving it to the person paying for it? And this is one of the problems with socialism is we want to reward people who are not productive. We punish the people who are productive. And so we're disincentivizing people to work hard and be productive. We're incentivizing, we're encouraging people to not work hard, not be productive, which is why socialism never works out in the long run. On top of the fact that they control the means of the production, so they hinder the market, they hinder entry into the market with entrepreneurship. There's a lot of problems beyond just that surface level, but this is where I don't think most people are having an intelligent conversation or an accurate conversation when it comes to what is free and how is it free, and probably something we should dive into after the break.
Stay with us. You're listening to WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. It is a definite biblical teaching that every individual will answer to God for the stewardship with which he was entrusted. Previous generations therefore realized that not only would each of us answer to God for how we handled our life and our family and our possessions, but also for how we handled our country. Consequently, voting was considered an act for which we were directly accountable to God. As Samuel Adams explained, let each citizen remember at the moment he is offering his vote that he is executing one of the most solemn trusts in human society for which he is accountable to God and his country. He should then appeal to his conscience that he has not trifled with that sacred trust. Voting is a serious responsibility for which Christians will answer to God. Therefore, make sure that you vote and vote biblically in the upcoming elections.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
We're back on WallBuilders Live talking about free college for everybody and what's fair, what's just, all of those different things. And we figured out that even the napkins at Chick-fil-A are not free. So stop grabbing extras and sticking them in your glove box, everybody.
Even
All
if
right,
it is
ahead,
their
guys.
pleasure.
That's even if they say my pleasure when you walk out with a whole container, which you should not do.
You're raising the price of chicken nuggets for everybody else when you take those
You really
napkins.
are. It's the truth. That's what my dad always says. He's like, when people grab extra stuff, he's like, they have no idea they're running up the price on their own hamburger. And then not for Chick-fil-A, that was other places. Anyway, go ahead, guys.
Well,
Sorry.
right, and this is one of the interesting things, even listening to some of the debates, Democrat debates going on, where we've heard different people talk about what's going to be free. And when the question always comes up, how are you going to pay for that? This is where there's a massive breakdown, because Bernie Sanders won't really answer how are you going to pay for stuff. He always talks about theoretical concepts and philosophies and well, people are going to have to do a little more and work a little harder and give this. And right, Elizabeth Warren has been one of the few people who actually was putting a price tag on some of what she said, and that's why she's been getting destroyed, right? That's why she jumped so far, and jumped is wrong, right? That nosedived would be correct. She nosedived because when people begin learning, wait a second, we're going to have to pay for this, and I'm going to have to pay for somebody else to do, and that's not appealing and attractive, but we're not asking the questions, who pays for this, and how is this going to work? And, by the way, one of the things our good friend Bob McEwen talks about is when the government takes your money, so it's not their money, to buy something that they're not going to use, which is what is by definition, a third-party purchase, the quality of that, whatever they are purchasing or creating, the quality of that object, of that item, of that good, that service, is going to be incredibly less than if the free market controlled it and you said, hey, instead of giving my money to the government and letting them buy something for me, why don't I keep my own money and I'll buy what I want? And that way I care about the quality and the price because it's my money, so I care about the price, and I'm going to consume it or utilize it, so I care about the quality of it. When the government takes money that is not theirs to buy something they're not going to use, they don't really do a good job controlling the expense of that program or the quality of that program, which is also another major problem. When we talk about all the free things government is going to do, government doesn't generally offer really good free things on any level.
Well, the other thing I think that we have going against us is in America, we've got kind of a quasi-arrogant attitude. It's like, well, it doesn't work for other nations, but it will work here in America. We can make anything work. Well, that's not necessarily true. We've got the experience of other nations that have done free college and they've done free health care and whatever, and it doesn't work there. And so to on the one hand think that, well, they just haven't done it the American way, that's an arrogance that just doesn't hold up. And then there's also folks that just don't know that it's been tried. I mean, it just sounds good to them. And when they start hearing that it has cost to it, they don't like it. And that's why Elizabeth Warren starts plummeting in numbers. So you've got this double factor going. Part is ignorance. We just don't know that it doesn't work. And part is arrogance, where we say, well, it'll work for us if we do it. We saw an article from Heritage Foundation that came out that really addressed this and kind of pointed out the facts that people in America are ignoring. I mean, it sounds good on paper, but there is a cost because there is no free lunch, there is no free college, there is no free guaranteed income, there is no free health care. And so she did it in such a good way. We thought this would be a really good discussion to have on WallBuilders Live.
Mary Claire Amselem from Heritage Foundation with us when we return on WallBuilders Live. Have you noticed the vacuum of leadership in America? We're looking around for leaders of principle to step up, and too often, no one is there. God is raising up a generation of young leaders with a passion for impacting the world around them. They're crying out for the mentorship and leadership training they need. Patriot Academy was created to meet that need. Patriot Academy graduates now serve in state capitals around America, in the halls of Congress, in business, in the film industry, in the pulpit, and every area of the culture. They're leading effectively and impacting the world around them. Patriot Academy is now expanding across the nation, and now's your chance to experience this life-changing week that trains champions to change the world. Visit patriotacademy.com for dates and locations. Our core program is still for young leaders 16 to 25 years old, but we also now have a citizen track for adults. So visit the website today to learn more. Help us fill the void of leadership in America. Join us in training champions to change the world at patriotacademy.com. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. Mary Claire Amselem is with us from the Heritage Foundation. Mary Claire, thanks for your time today.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm trying to decide which of your headlines I like better. I love them both. So the College Affordability Act is unaffordable. That's a great one from 2 months ago. And then you got one now. A free college would be a disaster. Just ask Europe. Okay, first question, just be honest. Do you come up with the titles? Because those are really good.
Some of them I do, yes. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, the College Affordability Act being unaffordable was sort of a layup. I mean, it's just so obviously expensive, so that was an easy one.
And so very true. So the left loves to offer all these free programs that somebody's got to pay for.
Right.
And so you dive into the economics of it and why nationally this would be an absolute disaster. Help us just quickly understand. I mean, other people have tried this, so this is not like we're coming up with a new idea. You're right. Just ask Europe. What would Europe say if we ask them?
Exactly. We're constantly hearing, politicians and policymakers on the left say, look at Europe. They're doing all these policies. Why is the United States so behind? And we hear that often in healthcare. Europe has socialized medicine. Why don't we have socialized medicine here? And so it's sort of a parallel for how we think about free college. And so in my paper, what I sort of break down is, this has not been a success story in Europe. In fact, far from it. Many European countries have abandoned their short experiments with free college. Many still have it and see pretty negative results. I like to point out that 50% of entering first-year students in French universities drop out after the first year. And so that's a massive waste of taxpayer money to be sending students to school.
Which kind of makes sense, right? They got no skin in the game. It's
Exactly.
free, so hey, why not? I'll go try this. And then, wasted money for the taxpayers, but also wasted time and purpose for those students. It's bad for everybody.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's important to remember the opportunity cost. I mean, this is time the students aren't spending working at a job, learning skills. I'm sure most people out there would agree that most of what you really learn about the job that you're doing, happens in the workplace. And so those are very important skills. And if we start to treat higher education as something that everyone has to do, that it's a right that everyone should go to a very lengthy 4-year expensive university, we're getting away from the purpose of higher education, which is to separate yourself, which is to show that you have some extra credential past high school that is meant for very specific career paths. But if we are simply saying that regardless of what you want to do with your life, regardless of what you want to study, you should simply go to college and figure it out, well, that's very costly for many students. And in a free system for taxpayers of that country.
That is such a huge point what you've said. So the whole idea of college separating you out from the field, as soon as you send everybody, it's no longer separating you out. I mean, this basic idea that college is for everybody ruins the real purpose of college.
Exactly. If everyone has a bachelor's degree, then no one has a bachelor's degree. I mean, if we make that the new standard, that everyone entering the workforce must have a BA after their name, then more people will be seeking out an MA or a PhD or, a doctorate or a law degree, things like that. That's why we're seeing, the wonky term for what I'm referring to is called degree inflation. If we simply send more people to get these more years of education, we're going to see people elongating the amount of time they're in school, regardless of how long they actually need to be in school to learn the skills that they need. It's not really responsive to that. It's responsive to how competitive you are with your peers. And so this is something that we need to back up and completely reverse the trend on and go back to a sense of, okay, well, what are the jobs out there that students will be applying for? What are the skills that they need? And then let's tailor our education to match those skills rather than simply trying to compete with each other for how many years we can stay in school.
That's good. Degree inflation. So that isn't just, inflation in terms of cost, I guess. That's inflation in terms of the individual's time investment. If your bachelor degree now means nothing, now you've got to get the law degree or the doctorate degree or whatever the advanced degree is to get yourself to stand out. So now instead of spending 4 years of your life on campus, you got to spend 7 or 8 or 10. And by the time you get done with all of this, now you're late 20s, early 30s. You've got all that debt to pay off. I mean, it's just a bad deal. I mean, I understand if you want to spend that extra time because of a specific field that needs that extra time, but we've inflated what you need for college, is what you're saying with degree inflation.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you made a good point that the costs are also inflating. So everything is inflated when it comes to higher education. And unfortunately, I think that's what happens when we see the federal government get involved in the way that it has. We see the same thing happening in healthcare. Once the government's gotten more intimately involved in healthcare, we see healthcare prices inflate. And we're seeing the same thing happen on college campuses. So in order to really reverse this degree inflation trend and cost inflation trend, we really do need to be looking to federal policies to take a step back.
Let's come back to your comparison to Europe, because like you said, I mean, it's very much like healthcare. I've never understood this idea of looking at failed policies in other countries and saying we want them. I mean, if I was going into the restaurant business, I wouldn't go to the ones that had failed and say, hey, how'd you do what you did? I want to do that. I'd go to the ones that are doing well and want to learn for them. And we've, used to have best education, best, healthcare in the world. Why would we want to copy these countries that have failing systems? But we keep trying to do that in so many areas.
And I think it's simply just a lack of information that's out there, which is why I wanted to look at these countries and say, okay, let's sort of break down what the actual success rate is. I'll use England as an example. England had free college from about the 60s to the 90s. And then they reinstituted tuition because it was simply a disaster. I mean, the problem with these programs is that they're on a set budget, and eventually that budget runs out. And so what happens, much like healthcare, is that rationing needs to occur. So universities started had to limit by law the number of students that they could admit, and then that severely closed out higher education opportunities from low-income students, from minority students, which I would argue is probably the exact opposite effect that many who instituted this policy would like to see happen.
Sure.
We also saw, resources per student significantly decline, so the amount of money that a school spends on educating that student significantly declined, and so we see quality get affected in that way as well. And so once we saw England reinstitute tuition, saying, okay, you have to start paying again, which I'm sure was met with a lot of groans, we did see those negative trends that I mentioned reverse. So students, there were more higher education opportunities, the quality of education increased, things like that. And so there is something to be said for having some skin in the game, like you mentioned before, for having some value put to that education. That doesn't mean we should be paying the astronomical prices that we do now, but having some reasonable market-based prices do have some positive effects in the long run.
And those market forces are the only thing that'll bring that price down. As you said at the end of your article, if you put the decision-making back into the individual's hands, then eventually the market will respond to that. But if somebody else is picking up the tab and paying for it, then individuals have no reason to try to get the price down. You folks at Heritage Foundation always do this for me. I have a gut feeling of the way things should be, but I can't articulate it or back it up with data, and boom, here you come with the data and the articulation of why this is such a bad policy and why the right thing to do is to put the decision back in the hands of the individual. So thanks for what y'all do. Keep it up.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Heritage.org is where you can go to get more information. That's Mary Claire Amsalem as our expert today on this issue. Look forward to having you back again, Mary Claire.
Thanks so much. Anytime.
Thanks to the Heritage Foundation for the good work they do, and for Mary Claire coming on with us today. You can get those articles. We'll have links today at wallbuilderslive.com. Back with David and Tim now. All right, guys, I guess it isn't fair or just for you to have to pay for my college and my kids and my grandkids and everybody else in Dripping Springs.
Well, I thought so many of the facts she pointed out should cause anyone to at least stop and think about it. All right, so France makes free college for everybody, and then 50% of students drop out after the first year. Well, that was a big waste of money. You know, we gave this free college for half the kids, and 1 year later, they're out. Rick, as you said, there was no skin in the game. There was really nothing that they had to lose for it. So we've got this vast outlay of money that is forever wasted, and we got no productivity out of it.
You know, I thought it was interesting, too, when she mentioned that England doesn't even offer free college anymore, because the way you hear it, it said that, well, in Europe, they have free college. I was totally under the impression that there was free college all over Europe. I didn't realize that there were several nations that have now gone away from that because they recognize it's just not sustainable. It doesn't work. It wasn't productive. I knew the quality was not great in many places. I knew that if you wanted quality, there were private institutions that you would need to pay for. And there was some basic information I had, but there was more stuff I learned about this. I thought that's really interesting because England is something that we often compare some similarities of our nations. And there's somebody who's already tried it, and they said this was not a good idea.
Well, I thought that she made a couple other points that just struck me as I hadn't thought of them in that way, particularly looking at Europe. But it's if we all go to college, then no longer are you using college to separate yourself out and be something different. And there's a reason to hire you that there isn't for everybody else. If everybody's got the same stuff, then nothing stands out about you, and there's no reason to give you any more, which all leads to that kind of socialistic kind of thing where we squash everybody in the same box. We make you all conform. But that concept of not being able to stand out, not being able to separate yourself, and that's what higher education was all about. And so, the mention was made that you get a degree inflation as a result. When everybody's got a degree, it's inflated to the point to where that there's no value to it anymore. And so you get this degree inflation. And the other thing I thought was really significant was when this happens and you start getting everybody having it, then you start having to ration it. You get into rationing it. It made sense with healthcare. You've only got a certain amount of money in the pot for healthcare. So we're going to say that your hip replacement is not as important as a heart transplant for somebody else, so you don't get a hip replacement. Well, it's super important to you. I mean, it's a quality of life issue, but you get into rationing, and the same thing happens in education. That now you're having to ration education, so it puts the government in charge of your education again. All the things you thought you were getting, you're no longer getting. So I thought it was really super significant. I guess I was reminded of Ecclesiastes 1:9 that there really is nothing new under the sun. You know, for Americans, we may think that we've got a creative edge on this, that we can do it in a way that's going to work. And you look around the world and say, no, they already tried exactly that same thing and it didn't work. No, they tried that too and no, you can't do that one. I mean, there really is a lot of lessons for us here from across the world that should help us shoot down this mentality of free stuff, including free college.
And Dad, you mentioned this earlier, is two of the biggest problems we have are ignorance and arrogance. We just don't know. And then sometimes we're arrogant enough to think, but we can make something work that's never worked before ever. And that, to some extent, is kind of true with America. American ingenuity. We're really good at making things work. Nobody's ever been able to do this. We do it. It's just that socialism is a different thing, right? Like, there's a reason it's never worked, because this program, this economic structure, this government control structure, it's not sustainable. And certainly it's been a great time in America to have a conversation about things that people should have learned a long time ago. And it's very clear that many Americans have not learned this. So this is a great time for all listeners. It's a great time to start engaging in conversations, start helping teach people why free things aren't free and why these are not always beneficial things. Free education, not the education you want. You want a good education that will help you be somebody and do more in life.
Well, friends at home, we appreciate you listening today to WallBuilders Live. Special thanks to Heritage Foundation and the good work that they do there. We love bringing this information to you. There's so much. I mean, I love just learning every day on the program. It's been one of the great privileges of my life to work with David Barton and Tim and the whole WallBuilders team for the last couple of decades. Just every day learning something new about America's founding or biblical application of these principles. And I would hope and really hope to challenge you to become a student of freedom as well, that you enjoy this learning and then become a force multiplier that shares it with your friends and family so that you're increasing the education across the country. We actually had a guest on months ago that said, ignorance is curable. And that is so true. In my own life, it's true. So many things that I've been ignorant about, and because someone was willing to take the time and teach me those things, it empowered my life, made me a better father, better husband, a better citizen, all of those things. And that's what we hope to do here at WallBuilders Live, is educate, inform, inspire folks just like you. But when you share it with your friends and family, it allows us to reach even more people. So please consider doing that today. You can do it at our website, wallbuilderslive.com. Grab the links to today's program or any of our programming throughout the week. Share it with your friends and family on Facebook and Twitter and all the social media outlets. And then, of course, while on the website at wallbuilderslive.com, we do ask you to make that donation. You can click on the contribute button there and make a one-time or monthly contribution. Those dollars are what make it possible for us to do all the things we do, from the radio program to the leadership training we do for young people to pastors and legislators. So many things happening, all the educational tools we put out. It's because of supporters just like yourself. So today, if you would consider giving of your life, your fortune, and your sacred honor, all three, taking a little time, giving a little bit of your money, and speaking truth by sharing these programs. Thanks so much for being a part of the solution. You've been listening to WallBuilders Live.
We stand undivided, forever united, fighting